Delve right in, which is great, because I have two amazing speakers here with me tonight. How do you say politely? I'm really sorry. Usually ladies go first, but I would like to start with Gilles to my far right. Gilles Retsin is originally from Belgium. He's an architect and designer based in London. His work has not only been is not only on show at the Hello Robot exhibition, as you will see. Sorry, just saw Caroline, who really helped to put this together. But also at the Museum of Art and Design in New York, the Royal Academy in London, Centre Pompidou. Gilles is, most importantly for his role here today, Program Director of the MA Architectural Design at UCL de Bartlett School of Architecture in London. He co-edited Robotic Building Architecture in the Age of Automation. He's the co-founder of Spin-Off, I would say, that's what you called it, UCL AUAR Labs, AUR Limited, that's a complicated title, a startup working towards an automated platform for affordable housing. And right here next to me, Ariana Dongus, who's a media scholar, journalist, teacher, based in Berlin. She is exploring the intersections of biometrics, colonial pasts, new forms of work, and machine intelligence. She contributes to a critique of today's digital economy. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. She has published a variety of articles and essays. She's a PhD candidate and works as a lecturer at Karlsruhe University of Arts and Design, where until this summer she also coordinated, is it Kim or K-I-M? Kim? Yeah. A research group for critical studies in machine intelligence. So, Gilles, you told me in our briefing conversation, you told me about this little project that you started on your, I think, Instagram feed or your website, where you played around with a new AI that does quite incredible things.
Yeah, so 3 months ago is the first time that I got genuinely scared by an AI, and that I genuinely thought, like, this is actually getting interesting and dangerous. 5 years ago, when the exhibition opened here, and we were here 5 years ago, I would never say that. 5 years ago, we were in full control. 3 months ago, everything changed. So 3 months ago, a completely unknown tech startup that had been working under the radar in Silicon Valley called Midjourney AI released to a selected group of people their first beta version of an image generator, which is essentially you can type any sentence, you just describe something, and then you will get an image that you can refine over time that is generated without any human intervention. I just practiced it with Amelie and Ariana outside, and we made some interesting images. So anyway, so I started to play with it, and I managed in a few minutes to recreate work that previously I would spend months and months of coding and modeling and refining, right? So I put these images online, and I was sneaky, and I asked for photos of architectural models. So they look like I've built just a few really beautiful architectural models, and I've been very busy over the summer, right? And I immediately get a text message from a curator of a rather important and big institution in London who's like, where can I see these models? I want to see them, right? And I'm like, shit, I'm in trouble because these models do not exist, right? There is not even a 3D model, there's nothing. This was just 2 minutes of work, right? And anyway, we went for a coffee and we had a chat. I was open and honest about it, that these images in a way are a lie, that they do not exist. And then we were talking about what do we do now with these images, right? Like how, like she was like, can we please fabricate those models? I want to exhibit them. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, there's no way to go about it. I would have to again spend hours and hours coding to actually make these models a reality, and then I would have to build them. And then the whole point of being so lazy is gone, right? And then I was like, okay, actually the only consistent, intellectually consistent way to do it is that we put these images online on a gig platform, on Fiverr, which is a kind of a website where you upload really nasty jobs that you don't want to do, and then anyone globally and Ariana can tell us more, who these people are, can pick up these jobs and execute them. So I was like, let's upload these images that took me 1 second. We put them on the Gig platform, and we ask random model makers anywhere to either 3D model them, make them by hand, and send them back to this institution in London, which is a very cynical and dark and interesting and kind of strange version of where we got 5 years ago, where we were programming robots to 3D print chairs. And now essentially, as a designer, and then we have to question even if you are still a designer, that your only action would be prompting an image, uploading the image, looking who bids the lowest price, enter the postcode, and you're done, right? So, and that's, I would say that's automation. That is exactly what you mentioned in your introduction. That is politics, that is very difficult social questions, questions around labor, around creativity, and yeah, around where we are now as designers, right? What it means.
Ariana, this touches really on, this goes right to the center of your research.
Yeah.
So who are these gig workers, and how does this whole system work?
I mean, there is not the gig worker. Obviously, that there's a variety of people from different social classes who do this type of work. But I want to skip back to where you say you think that this is what automation is. And actually, there's been some researchers who have proposed a different term, which is called heteromation. Maybe sounds a bit academic to you at first, but what it means is actually that there is not just a machine that automatically, without any human labor, effort, knowledge involved, is just creating any type of model, any type of a product. And I think this is a very useful way to think about and contextualize gig work, especially when we think about AI. So to give maybe a little bit of context, so I'm coming from a media theory and journalist background, and what I'm interested in is basically to study like the hegemonic paradigm of our time, which I think is high-tech like AI. And so how can we understand it when we say, as we just understood, it's heteromation, it is socially produced, but who are these producers and where do they live? And it can be, many students of mine also had the idea, okay, I do a project that involves gig workers at Amazon Mechanical Turk or at other platforms. And this is a great thing to do, and then there comes my little but, because we are in a very privileged position to do these jobs. But when you think about maybe rather the darker backside of it, and you go to other places, we go to places like the Global South, for instance, it is a different story. So my research is, okay, how can I make it in a nutshell? Basically, looking at how AI makes a lot of labor invisible, yeah, and it is invisible basically through a planetary division of labor. And for instance, refugees, migrants are doing in refugee camps or in the places where they were fleeing towards, also to cities, not only in camps, they are doing this gig, this click work in order to make at least a little bit of extra money. And so this is a very precarious, double precarious, triple precarious situation where here we find high-tech companies basically extracting labor knowledge from very, very marginalized people. And I think, this is a bit of, as much we had the conversation also before, how great 3D printing and all these new technologies are in order to be more efficient, especially with regards to climate crisis and things like that. But this is really like the more invisible backbone, the backside that we also should look at, as I want to argue, yeah.
So as you said to me, and I think this is a really nice and interesting way to put it, our labor is not replaced, but deplaced. So basically, it's just gone elsewhere.
It's gone, overboard, so to speak. And we should look at this a little bit more. I don't want to.
Can you just maybe some people are not familiar with what gig work actually is? Can you just give us a brief description of how this works?
Yeah, basically any person can become a gig worker. You create a profile on this platform. I wanted to actually do it at Amazon Mechanical Turk. Is from the company, the tech company Amazon, but they rejected me. And I must admit, I also did order in Amazon in the past, but I ironically ordered like critical, capitalist critical, tech critical books. So maybe this is why I was thinking, my students and we were thinking maybe that's why, but I don't know. Either way, you can do that. And then there's basically a pool of jobs that you can say you want to do. Is micro tasks, yeah? And very often you don't even know for what product you do that. So in the case of, for instance, of artificial intelligence, it needs vast databases of images in order to be trained in the first step. And then it can do the so-called learning and recognize faces, objects, whatsoever. But the problem is these images have to be annotated very precisely, and for that, for instance, you need gig workers. You say, there's a street, there's a tree, there's a old lady crossing the street, these things. Yeah.
So but, that is work that only humans can do.
That is work that only humans can do, and this is also why actually in the beginning, Amazon Mechanical Turk has marketed its company as artificial intelligence, directly, precisely hinting to that, yeah.
And just to give another detail and to draw the full picture, and how then is this paid? How is it remunerated?
I mean, you get paid. You can either be paid in remuneration, so basically you stay at the Amazon platform. In the case of Amazon, maybe you know it for different platforms. It's different, but you can either get the cents, yeah, on your bank account, or you add it up and then you order another product from the Amazon universe, which of course this is what they want.
Of course. And you said cent, so that is really important. It's not euros, it's not dollars.
Yeah, no, it's sorry, I'm getting sorry. No, but it's really little money, and it's very problematic. There's no labor contract, there's no way to organize as a labor union or anything. Yes, it's very. You're dispersed around the planet and you labor at a product, for a product, and you don't even know what it is sometimes.
Now, Gilles, I mean, going back to this really interesting experiment that you started. Now, we have this series of really amazing, exciting new imagery that you created within 2 minutes that would otherwise have taken you weeks and months. But I mean, it's images, it's not really there. Ultimately, we still live in a three-dimensional world. We need to build real houses and even real models. Like, we need these in our real lives. What does that mean? I mean, is it even relevant? Like, okay, I can do an image in 2 minutes, but so what?
I mean, it's relevant, I think, on the level of creativity, right? And that's where it's really stunning. Like, the realization that you can actually have a machine produce something extremely compelling with almost zero effort. And that is mind-blowing. And of course, yes, this image means maybe nothing, but maybe it also means a lot, right? Because it's a vision. It's an imagination. And that is really, I mean, the groundbreaking thing with 5 years ago. Like 5 years ago, when we were experimenting with robotics, with automation, with 3D printing, I mean, we knew exactly what we were doing, right? You were writing these algorithms and you know exactly which beautiful patterns you will get out of them, and you were curating them. And that's a fine and nice and kind of innocent and beautiful world. But now it's properly scary, because now it's actually an image. It's actually something that normally maybe would take a human, you know, an entire lifetime to be able to come up with something so special and unique that another human has not thought of it yet, right? And then it's also, the interesting thing is then also like to bring it back to these questions around, you know, these notions of labor in AI, right? The interesting thing is that we know very little around these image-based models, why they are so good and where they got the data from, right? So essentially, these models have absorbed up to 5 billion images that are made by anyone here or anyone in the world that, you know, you could say all of production of humankind over the past 1,000 years that is on the internet. And it has taken that. Yeah. And it has not taken that just as pixels, it has taken it plus the meaning. And that's the difference a bit with, you know, the old models of like gig workers. It has taken the Google image, you could say, and the key words that relate to the image, so the semantic meaning of the image. So if you say a painting of a tree by Van Gogh, it knows, it can recognize it, right? It has linked the semantic meaning with the image. But that also means that it has basically absorbed the labor and the work of hundreds of thousands of artists and designers. And everyone can use this now, right? This intellectual content, that body of work, has been absorbed by 3 Silicon Valley startups, right? And they have never asked anyone's permission of like, well, they're like, well, these images are online, we've seen them, they're for grabs, right? So there were these kind of desperate calls on the internet of a number of illustrators who are the most affected by this, right? That's actually very funny. Like everyone always thought the first job to be automated will be, you know, someone, a kind of a mechanical job, but actually it looks like illustrators, and funny enough, even poets, like, it's very good at writing poetry as well. Like, that they're actually at risk of automation, right? So these people went online and were like, please, can we make a deal that you don't prompt my work? It's called prompting, they're like, please have respect for my work, don't use my work in your images, right? And then there were really interesting debates between the first artists who were playing around with it, where we, you know, were accusing almost each other, like, can we make an agreement between us, like in this group of people who plays around with it, that we don't use any names of living architects, right? Like suddenly there's a sort of ethical code of conduct that emerged from, you know, playing around, after 1 week playing around with it. It's really like, we need to, you know, we need to understand what this means, right? Yeah, ongoing.
Ariana, what does that mean for creative labor? I mean, there's a lot of we addressed a lot of issues here, like intellectual property, but also, you know, so many different issues. What is your take on this?
I think it's a very hard, complex one when you ask yourself what is the value of creative labor in the not only digital age, but in a digital age that is progressing at a speed that is really mind-blowing. So when I said earlier, actually automation doesn't exist, it does exist, it's more a provocation to think about who's actually laboring what type of work. Yeah, but it is. It's nothing that I could ever answer, but I think it goes into a bigger conversation that also, I think, when I listened to you in the guide, in the information round for the guides earlier today, learning about the exhibition and the pieces there, to really advocate, to understand, when we think about robots, that we are not only living already in the robot, but that we are the robot, and really thinking about, we could also say from an AI model point of view, we are the model, because we are the data points. All of our socially produced data, whatever it is, it doesn't even have to be just social media. It could be just the travel and everything. It becomes a very fine-grained net, and I think this is a conversation to think together. Of course, it is important to think about art and design and the creative classes and what is happening to them, but I think it should be embedded in this bigger conversation of where we're going as a society. That's just,
I would also just add to that creative work was anyway already precarious, right?
That's true, yeah.
And undervalued massively. So the question is maybe this is a moment where there's a real discussion around what the value is of this, right? And how important is this for society? Like, maybe we can see it a bit as a provocation. And for me, I'm fascinated, for example, by a really simple question around the human there. Like, I was always thinking, like, we know we can also AI generate music, for example, but who would want to listen to AI generated music, right? I mean, people to listen to a song of a pop star like whoever, Rihanna, let's say, right? And why do they do that? Because Rihanna is a human with stories, and then there's gossips, and then she does something, and then people are following this, and then there's a fashion line. But then if if it's just a song that was created in like 0 seconds by nothing, by an AI, and it can be replicated in its variations another infinite times, does that have a value for us as humans or not, right? And that then goes back to these images. I mean, maybe these images have no value unless they somehow, people can connect it maybe back to work, to a body of work maybe that this person was working with before. Like, I don't know if these images have any value without a human author that maybe is kind of connected to them.
Of course, you could create an avatar and a
Well, that also
narrative
happens.
and
Yeah,
the-
you
and
have-
the- and
you
the
have
fake
digital
biography,
avatars.
and then you
Yeah.
have the avatar
Yeah.
who's, you know,
Yeah.
the persona.
There are some very
who-
famous ones now.
On
Yeah, yeah.
Instagram, they have
Yeah.
millions of followers. It's a complete hologram and
Yeah.
very human.
Yeah, I follow
human-like.
some of them
Yeah.
as well. Okay. Yeah.
I think what's interesting about this conversation is that it really brings up issues of power, right? I mean, who's in power, whose work and whose intellectual property is valued and valuable, and also, you know, paid in literal money, right? And this is really an issue that comes down to power, which is again so much what you research.
Yeah, I mean, what we see is a concentration of power in the tech oligarchies, as some might want to frame it, and you see a vast majority really on the other side of a digital proletariat, lumpen proletariat. They are very precarious, like people already in the US, we know this very well, working already 2-3 jobs, and on the side doing the gig work, for instance, yeah. I think it's very problematic, and this is up to us as a society, but as well to the governments to really regulate on that. Other problem is then when you go even a level higher and you look at the actual power structures. Just to give this the side note, maybe you know that Amazon, the US company Amazon, cooperated with Palantir, who's a very mysterious, shady big data company, also has very close ties to the US military, and here you really have, yeah, nexuses of power that are integrating, and yeah, it's a big debate to have, and we need then more than the governments, and we know we cannot always trust them, but us, the civil society, to really do something about it.
Totally, and that's also present. I mean, it's funny, like the original dream of the digital was that it would democratize everything, right?
Yeah.
Because the cost of production comes down. You don't need a factory anymore to produce. You have a 3D printer. You don't need to buy an expensive camera. You have a cheap smartphone. And you know, it was meant to democratize everything and to make everything accessible to everyone. And then we have seen that this beautiful story is not true. What it leads to is platforms where all these people who are precariously producing things for free need to trade what they have produced, right? So it's actually not making, I mean, it's making things more accessible on one level, but then it's resulting in this kind of massive platforms that are kind of monopolizing the means of production ultimately. And that's also the interesting thing now with AI that we're seeing is that, so the official argument is like, hey, now since 3-4 months, these image-based models are accessible to everyone. Like, it's actually for free. All of you can download it right now, and you can make your own images. But you could never make that image-based AI yourself. It's not accessible. Because to make that model, to train one iteration of the model, you need 5 billion images, which means that it costs millions and millions to just run it, you know, to just train one version of that model. The only people who can do that is huge venture capital funded tech companies, right? And they are creating these super fascinating new types of companies that they don't even know yet what they're up to. Like there is one, the biggest one now is Stability AI, based in London. It's a company you're going to hear a lot from. Like they were nothing 3 months ago. Now they're $1 billion valuation, and they don't have a business plan.
Let's see.
The only thing they know is that they will. I mean, they're basically changing the way we imagine things right now, right? And you just need to realize that, yeah, they have the power because they're backed obviously by...
but the interesting thing is we've been talking about gig workers, and this sounds like, you know, there's this proletariat, you know, this people that are not, I'm being provocative now. They're not us, you know. We're not them. We're not gig workers. But the point is that we all have become gig workers in a way, because those machines use anything that we have ever entered into the internet, right?
But also, if you teach at a university in the UK, you are always a gig worker as well. So.
The students are the gig workers, or what?
No, the academic staff, I would argue.
Okay, yeah.
Well, but what does that mean for creativity? I think that is probably something that many people here work in the creative fields. So have we all become, you know, superfluous? I mean, can we all go home and, I don't know, train something new? Is creativity and creative work anything that's worth anything?
No, I mean,
longer?
I want to be like really optimistic about this, because I think it's important that we are critical and understand the dark sides which we have now explored, but now optimism. Like, I'm very optimistic. I love it that this image-based AI exists. It means I can do better work quicker, and I need less resources. And it's great. I think it's a great kind of companion or collaboration, and it's a fascinating collaboration with a machine, or as you pointed out before, with something that maybe we have all created together over many, many centuries, because it feeds of us. So maybe it's something really beautiful. Maybe it's just a way that maybe we can all kind of, collaborate together in a way, you could say, or that we could go beyond, kind of our current limitations. I think it's fascinating. And actually most designers that I meet, the moment that they start playing with this tool, they get addicted for 2 weeks. Like, they disappear for 2 weeks. Because suddenly they can, all the ideas that they have in their mind, they can suddenly output them, right? And that's fantastic. Like, everyone loves it secretly. It's dark, it's scary, but it's so exciting, right? And I'm always attracted to things that are, kind of forbidden, right? Like, this is really interesting.
Ambivalent. Yeah. What's your take, Ariana?
I would agree with you. I'm not a designer, but I work at the Art and Design University, so I do get the enthusiasm. What a hard word tonight. I really do get it, and also I think, as I said earlier, and you also mentioned it, to use you used this nice quote: "Nature is scarce in material, but abundant in form, and humans." The other way around, like, we waste so much stuff. So I think from that point of view, I really am excited about these technologies. But there's my critical researcher in me. But again, beyond this binary, is it good or is it bad, we have to have a dialogue that really thinks both together. So it is great that you can work really fast, more efficient. You even have new visions because you're so much faster, and you can come to very different conclusions, and I get that. But then when we look about how much water or other raw materials are being wasted by training this model, how much energy it is, or how much labor is exploited, under what conditions, we have to think about it. It should be just in the conversation beyond these binaries. Yeah, it should always be balanced, both very important aspects. Yeah.
And the conversation has to remain human labor.
And it has to be more sustainable, yeah, and has to become more, AI is not sustainable at all. I mean, there are now some projects and ideas and everything, like, people are not stupid. Did I do anything wrong with the microphone?
No.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is like a progress, yeah, but I still think we need much more of it. Yeah.
I mean, another issue that I think this all brings up is a key question for our society in this moment, namely to find a communal way of tagging or verifying what is fake and what is true, right? I mean, this is at the bottom of so many issues and problems and conversations that we're having as a society globally, and this is really, I mean, maybe this is, what do you think? Maybe this is the trigger that will finally prompt us to get to a point where we find some. I mean, is there a way? I don't know. I think
but it's as cynical, right? So now we have new startups which also have billion-dollar valuations, who are basically developing AIs to see what is AI generated, right? So you would have an AI that checks which image is actually real and which image is not real, which is this kind of bizarre meta exercise that, the right to know, or the power to know if something is real or not real, that you would have to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's depressing.
But also, I think there is something like I mean, it's true good that you pointed out, and it also shows this self-perpetuating vicious circle of these industries. But of course, it's good that in a way that it is there, because at one point, if you want to go to www.thispersondoesnotexist.org or .com, either way you will find it. You will see faces that are entirely generated by AIs, and you would not know, wow, this is not a real person. This is awkward, it's uncanny, it's scary. So of course, I think it's very important to, just as with the fake news and online propaganda, it's very important to have counter tools from below. I mean, I don't know if the tech company is so much from below, but like something, you know, to be able to discern what is true and what is fake. But I also think that there's, in a certain way, a way of collective learning and accumulation of new knowledge, how to deal with this. Like when we think back in the days when people were sitting in the movie theaters and there was a train approaching, they were running out the theaters, as we know, because they really thought, oh man, what's happening? Yeah, there's the train, it's going to roll me over. So I think that this is something like a collective process with technologies like AI, that we will be more savvy with them. Not to make it sound, oh, it's no problem at all. I'm a very big critic.
And I just want to spin around Amelie's question, whether it's true or false. Like as a designer, we never ask that, right? We ask, is it good or bad? And that would be really interesting with like machine-generated work. I mean, who's going to say if it's good or bad, right? Is it us? Or do we need another machine to tell if it's good or bad? And like that becomes really interesting, I think, as well, as a kind of like, because maybe like that goes back to this question if something is valuable or not, right? I mean, who assigns it the value, like the statement, if this is now really good or really bad?
True.
Yeah. I feel like we need to end this on a positive note. People may be depressed after everything.
I was trying to be optimistic.
Well, you did.
It's great. It's a great future.
In a dark way, you were. Is there anything really exciting and positive? I mean, there is. First of all, we still are humans, and there are so many human qualities that we can team up and, you know, come together and talk to each other and find communal ways of dealing with these machines, which is my biggest hope, all of us. But yeah, what's your optimistic?
Yeah, I mean, I'll repeat a bit what I mentioned before. Like, I'm very optimistic about all of this, just as I was optimistic about robots. Like, I think...
classical robots.
Yeah, with any technology, it's great. It just depends on how we shape a political and social framework around it, right? Like, these technologies in themselves are brilliant and fantastic and fascinating, and they're advancing all of us as humanity, for sure. It just, I mean, the big question is, why does no one want to pay an artist for their work, right? That question has nothing to do with the AI, right? And so that's just, I'm very optimistic around all those technologies, and it's more, the real discussion is how do you want to shape the society around these technologies, right? And it's not that simple, of course, because there is, sitting next to an academic, so there's, of course, you know, these technologies also shape the society, so we're not entirely free in setting those questions, but I think we need to be absolutely optimistic where creativity will go with this in the future. I think we're in a really strong position to make amazing things.
Yeah, I can really only agree with that, and I think it really comes also to the question how we think about technology. We always create it or treat it like, not always, we always, not maybe you not, but there's this very strong narrative that is almost like a UFO coming, and it's like just there and outside society and just sits there. Also in Germany we have this very strong academic, unfortunately, tradition, and it's not really helpful. And I think if you look at the history of science and technologies, you would see and then taking maybe a specific angle from a materialist understanding, feminist histories, you would really see that in all human times there was a counterculture. The people are very smart, very intelligent. They would reuse, reappropriate technology in the cyborgian way. It's not Donna Haraway invented the cyborgian way, so to speak. Yeah. So I think it's really important to look at that. And when we treat technology not as this alien force that comes upon us, that is, I think, still maybe also a heritage of the Second World War, especially in Germany. But yeah, I think this is very helpful. And to not be afraid, as you were saying, or I don't remember, not be afraid of the robots, not be afraid of AI, really trying to have a conversation with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. Have a conversation.
In a
with
way,
it, right?
true. Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Wonderful. That is great. So I would like to open the conversation. If any of you has any question to these two brilliant people, now is the moment. I think we have a mic somewhere. There it is in the back. Are there any questions? Seize the opportunity. I would really like to encourage you. No? Ah, there. Wonderful. Courageous.
Hello. Thank you very much for this very eye-opening discussion. I was wondering about the statement you made about the value of design before AI and now during AI. And because you are a human designer, maybe you can give your answer, and we'll know it's going to be tainted by your humanity, but isn't the value of creativity because of the human labor that is so intensive and painful and sometimes leads to dead ends that actually then open roads to the final product that you couldn't have arrived if you just type some names into an AI model?
I strongly disagree with that, yeah. Because I think that's kind of how we traditionally, since the 19th century, that's a 19th century idea that art requires blood, sweat, and, pain, right? That it's through this struggle that something beautiful emerges. And I think I've always been very interested in getting to really good things with the least amount of effort, right? I think that's intelligence then maybe, right? Like I always think, like if you have, let's say there are two types of students. You have students who work for 6 months and they get a 9 out of 10, right? And they do a brilliant piece of work. Then you have a student who works the last 2 weeks and he gets a 7 out of 10. Who was the better student?
I think the student with the highest creativity.
Well, but we don't know, right? Was the one who worked very little in the last 2 weeks. Maybe, maybe he was more creative with the little means that were available in that short period of time. So I would never put the value of creativity in terms of the amount of effort that it took. Because especially the moment that we begin to work with algorithms, with automation, and even with mechanical reproduction of things, I mean, every mechanical copy of a Bauhaus chair has the same value, right? I mean, it's not that the original one has more value than the other ones. I mean, it's a continuous reproduction, the possibility to copy an object that has fantastic value. And then with automation, it goes a step further in the sense that, then it starts to also kind of go into creativity and design. Like, this book, for example, is a great example that it's an algorithm that the artist wrote, and then they can generate, every page in the book took them like 1 second, they have another page, right? They're all equally beautiful, it works, and it was little, I'm sure it was a lot of effort. But, it's not that they kind of spent blood, sweat, and tears. So I don't think, I would say, like, we can't measure artistic value in misery that it costs to the artist. And I would like to think that it should be measured in happiness, right? It should be measured in kind of, the amount of free time this artist had, right? Yeah.
We have another question. Where's the mic?
I've got the microphone.
Good.
So we're not here together, by the way. But I wanted to follow up on something that my neighbor here said. You were talking about blood, sweat, and tears, but what about love? My mum is a great cook, and she's very good at crafts as well. And whenever I said, that's a really fantastic dinner, I love that dessert, or that's a really beautiful jumper, she said, that's because I made it with a lot of love. So what about love?
Love is
Good
a lot
question.
of work.
I think it's funny because actually the classic algorithm is a recipe. Yeah, you have a very straight input, and then you not always know what the output is, but it's basically an algorithm. I wanted to say something else, but yeah, maybe just very quickly. I also don't really buy in this lonely, suffering genius that has to be schöpferisch, be creative. I do think dedication is not really measurable. Like, when we talk about value, is it something quantifiable? Because I can do something, I can write now a text that maybe I think is really bad in 2 years, probably, or even shorter time, but I have accumulated so much time in thinking and discussing, being here, seeing your reactions, be talking to you with the students, you know how it goes, yeah? So it's really hard to measure it, and I think to think more about collaboration. Also, you were saying to use AI as a collaborative actor in the process is, to me, also much more appealing, trying to deconstruct a bit this myth of the sole genius that, or inventor that we still have from the Industrial Revolution, which is, by the way, also just wrong because there's always a big network of other laborers behind it. But this is just my 2 cents.
I just want to go back because it was a very beautiful question about love. I think we need to address it. Like, it was really beautiful. And I think the love is there in this, like, almost laborless world, right? Where, let's say I sit in my room and I create 1,000 images. You have 1,000 objects that, or visions that you could fall in love with. But then you pick one, right? There's that one image that you absolutely love. And that's the image that you're going to take out and that maybe you are so proud of and you love it so much that that's the only image you maybe will show to the world, and you're going to discard the other 999 images because you don't love them, right? That's a process, yeah. Yeah. It's a process, but it's not, I mean, that's not something that then I would say is a process necessarily of blood, sweat, and tears, right? It's maybe has difficult decisions there, and maybe you'll ponder about it for a night or two, and you will, if you have to make that decision, it's a decision of love, right? It's a decision where I will go for this image and not for the other one, and maybe that's where the idea of maybe a passion or a kind of intuition there comes back. So yeah.
I would claim. Oh, Matteo. Sure.
Thanks for that interesting discussion. You know, we're discussing this in the context of an exhibition that also looks at other fields than labor. For example, the domestic sphere, the classical production sphere, the traditional production sphere, or even the medical sphere. Do you see similar topics or similar discussions as you just had about distribution of power, labor, payment, in also those fields arising with artificial intelligence taking over?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, I see, because like AI is, I mean, in a way, it's really beautiful, I think, to have this discussion as a parallel with the Hello Robot exhibition, because just as the robots invaded, the domestic space, I mean, a washing machine is a robot, etc. And we'll have something similar with AI, like it's applicable in every single human activity, right? So it will invade, it could easily invade like a domestic sphere, maybe in organizing a family's agenda, for example, optimizing the agenda in your Google Calendar. That would be brilliant. Like I wouldn't mind doing that. So I think it's something that is more and more entangled in daily life and in all aspects of our life. And if not completely entangled today, in a few years from now, absolutely, I think it touches on so many things. Yeah. It also touches on love. Again, a dating app is driven by AI, right? So it already touches on that as well, right?
Just as a last word, maybe, as you were saying earlier, that these technologies are covering everything like a second layer of color, and I think that's basically just adding on what you just said. It's very invasive. It's very omnipresent, and of course, it also goes in the domestic sphere, it goes into the healthcare sector, and then we should ask ourselves, who is going to have the privilege to really use the automatic Staubsauger, vacuum cleaner, or who not? Who's going to be able, because of course when you think about the domestic sphere and love, of course I think about labor of love and reproductive care work and all these things from a feminist tradition. So of course, who's going to be able to enjoy that really? And is this really, has the invention of the washing machine or the dishwasher really changed power structures in the household? I don't know. Just to, you know, invite all of us to again, not
Reflect
praise
on
or,
that.
yeah. That's just my 2 cents maybe, yeah.
Okay, any further questions? Yes. Mike over there?
More questions, sorry.
You really want to go and have peace?
No, I'll be like,
Not the audience, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you. Well, one point I found to be really interesting was about the artists talking about their works being used to train the algorithms. And a thought that I had, and I would be interested in hearing your opinions, is how is that different or similar to how we learn art? We go to art school, we see the works of others, we are being inspired. What can you say about that?
I mean, I would agree with you. I mean, you know, I always think that like traditional architectural education is copy school, right? Like you always work from a precedent. That's how you learn architecture. It's like you take a building like this one, and the student has to redraw the building. And by redrawing the building, they learn the building, and then they can maybe reproduce the building or make variations on the building. And that's how you learn. I mean, that's literally how any human learns, right? And so the question is maybe just an ethical question, right? It's like every architecture student would then also know that if their final submission is too close to this one, that maybe they will not get a very high mark and they've done something wrong, right? So I think there is something around, like a kind of an ethical question and an exploration to what degree you're comfortable with using living artists' work in a very literal way or not. But in a way, and it's also maybe another ethical question towards these artists, like why would you not want to advance everyone by submitting your work for learning, right? Why do you want to keep it for yourself? Why not share it, right? So I think it's a question that you know is a very human question around like where we draw those boundaries and which position do you want to take, and it's a debate. Like I don't think anyone is right or wrong to say like I don't want to be part of this system, of course. Yeah.
Any more questions? Yes, right here. Yes, oops, sorry.
You're directly below the light.
Yeah, so it was hard to see you.
Hello, I just have a question in the beginning. You said that at one point these algorithms got scary, and I kind of failed to see what is the scary part. So can we actually see can we anticipate a revolution in the design, or is everything which is being proposed by this algorithm rather an evolution of an existing solutions?
I mean, I would say it was scary to just see that that you could get an incredibly beautiful output with zero labor, right? And it was scary to think that to make the same image that I would need weeks and weeks to do it, and that it was just possible to do that one image, and that then the scary thought maybe was also like, wait, if it can do such a beautiful image in 1 second, how many more options are there available, right? Like, and then where's the rabbit hole, right? That you go down and you kind of frantically want to begin to map like this entire possibility space, right? And that's also scary in a way, that you suddenly know that if like a beautiful image or vision is that accessible that quickly, like what are the implications of that, right? So I think that's something that I was initially very scared of. Now, I mean, now that has worn off a little bit. I think now I've digested thousands and thousands of these images now on my social media feeds, and now my eyes are longing to see something that was not created with an image-based generator. Like, it gets really boring very quickly. Now people are like, that's just an image generator. Like, I don't want to see it, right? So, yeah,
Which
not
comes down
scared
to
anymore.
what you said.
Yeah.
We're getting used to it. We're learning, and we're learning to understand what is, you know, generated by an AI and what is actually original.
Yeah.
It's just a cat and mouse chase, basically.
Sorry, just one more thing. You just You just also said that there are many of your colleagues who you lose them for a couple of weeks into this. Do they come back? Why do they come back?
They came back.
Do they really do they keep using this tool, or is it just like a thing that they start and then they come back to the old solution? Because I'm imagining that for a designer, a process of designing is what compels him to design. Yeah. So maybe, this is like a pop-up thing, which then it gets interesting for a couple of times, but for a person to really love its work, I guess you enjoy the process and you want to kind of slow it down. You don't want really to have like an easy solution. So I'm just curious, do they keep on doing this fast solving, or do they come back to pencil and paper basically?
I mean, there's no answer to that yet, I think. I mean, I'm observing them actively to see what they are doing. I mean, I have the impression that the novelty is wearing off quickly on that thing. It's becoming more and more omnipresent, and I would imagine, I mean, I'm excited for the next step where I really see someone taking an image that they love and using it as a start of maybe a new creative project, right? And that's still something that is going on right now and that we'll see play out.
Well, I'm basically a civil engineer, so this is what they do. We take images and we try to make it into reality. But often then in the process, the image gets changed because the optimal design in the end has to have this materialization in the beginning of the design. So this is something which I would see in this process as really a lacking element, because in the EI we are not limited by anything, but in reality we do have things that are constant, gravity being one of them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Please join us. We will all walk to the museum now to see the show. I really invite you to stay with us and come and see this exciting show and follow up on the conversation. Gilles and Ariana will stay with us for the entire evening. Have a great evening and have a great night. Thank you.